with oil, so basically the thing that I'm pretty sure is going on is you can short paper contracts like WTI, and like it's very similar to the precious metals market in that, like 97 to 99% of contracts, they're paper and they're never executed for delivery, right? No one ever actually asks for a delivery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a quick reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy or sell any shares, products, or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. Joining us next, a very interesting guest, Gavin McCracken, a Canadian AI PhD and self-described head of Commodities macro, known for his sharp, data-driven, and often sarcastic analysis of oil markets, geopolitics, and undervalued energy equities. Someone that I am following for quite some time. Gavin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much. Oil, of course. You're a great follow when it comes to oil, when it comes to, especially now with all this happening around Strait of Hormuz, Iran war. I have a lot of questions for you, but let's start. Maybe walk us through your background. How is a AI PhD student researcher ended up branding himself head of Commodities macro? And what did the path look like from early investing to the returns you claim you have? You had, I think, 2,000, 3,000% over 5-6 years. Tell me more about your story.
Yeah, so that's actually, I think, like 200 to 300,000%. But so
Nevertheless.
I guess I was always into investing, and like I read a lot about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger back when I was in high school. Um, but I didn't really manage my own account beyond just buying Apple and Google in like 2013. And basically what happened was I got back from a trip to Cuba in December of 2020. I got back in early January 2020, and I got the most sick I'd ever been. Like for like 15 days I had a fever. And I started hearing about this pandemic, COVID. Not a pandemic yet, right? Just these rumors, and I was like, "Oh shit, I had that," and I kicked my ass. So I decided to go full cash. Like I sold everything, and a couple months later, I went all in on oil while it was negative. So
Sold everything
that's the
like
start.
real estate or what?
No, just my stock portfolio, which was just a handful of stuff. Wasn't worth much money. But that's when it started, and that's of course the classic Warren Buffett buy when others are fearful, right? So I
Yeah,
bought mostly Cenovus Energy, Suncor, and Enbridge were my three.
that's a great story.
That's
What
how
does
that got me into oil.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what does head of Commodities macro mean in practice for you? How you research, size positions, and manage risk day to day?
For the most part, I'd say that I'm mostly like a geopolitical speculator. Like back then too, right? I mean, like COVID is a huge geopolitical event, right? Affected every country. The main thing back then was I just knew the vaccines would be announced, and the second they'd be announced, of course, didn't know when it was going to happen, but like, of course, as soon as they announced, you could expect oil to double, and like it did. It went from 30 to 60 fairly quickly. Um, and so, of course, all the stocks I just mentioned, Enbridge, Suncor, and Cenovus, they all went crazy, right? Um, and then I ended up staying in oil because at that point I started learning about OPEC and they kept, cutting. They weren't willing to, hike. And for a long time they kept cutting. And I started to predict them and be like, oh, what are they gonna announce? And I was right every time. Even when they started finally hiking, I was like, I feel like they're gonna hike now. So that's when I started getting more comfortable that I knew what I was doing.
Gavin, you've been very vocal that free markets in oil and precious metals are currently fake. Can you explain in plain terms your model for how SPR releases plus paper futures can suppress oil prices far beyond the physical barrels involved?
Oh yeah, for sure. So as far as precious metals go, I think that they're trading fair right now. You know, there's a lot to be said there. I won't go into it now, but um, with oil, so basically the thing that I'm pretty sure is going on is you can short paper contracts like WTI, and like it's very similar to the precious metals market in that, like 97 to 99% of contracts, they're paper and they're never executed for delivery, right? No one ever actually asks for a delivery. And so because of that, if you short them, it's not such a big deal if they just keep rolling over, right? And so if you have something like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and you know that only about 1/30th of the time you might have to actually deliver something, um, you can like obviously you can back like you can just use probability, you could say short 30 contracts for every one contract you have the physical on hand to actually deliver, right? And so if on top of this you mix this with timing, so you have a useful idiot like Barack Ravid and you're going to leak him information and he's going to publish, and then you just sit there waiting for the headline, and the second the headline drops, I don't even think it's trading algorithms. It's just planned. It's like boom, dump, 10 million barrels, right? And so this was a pattern we all saw again and again and again, right? And also before the headline would drop, I actually don't think it was insider trading. I think it was part of the strategy. A bunch of barrels would be dumped just to take out the bid. So, now as soon as the news drops and some people panic and you dump more barrels, there's nothing to catch it, right? So you'd see these massive sell-offs on headlines that were repeated again and again, like there will be a deal tomorrow, and this went on and on, right? We were promised deals for like 50 days in a row or something before we finally had a non-legally binding memorandum of understanding. So,
Very interesting. So, Gavin, long story short, you are earning money on herd mentality and stupidity, if I may call it. How oil market and silver market as well, how manipulated are they? How rigged are they, in your opinion?
man, it's definitely impossible to know. Like, I think right now precious metals kind of make sense. Like, I do think they're going to go up long term. And there's tons of reasons for that. Like, the main one is the Strait of Hormuz disruption, right? A ton of countries are now very interested in solar and replacing, the fact that they're reliant on this strait that 20% of the world's energy was flowing through, right? So there's a lot of countries buying solar that's future silver demand, right? Um, and as far as like oil goes, like there's no way for us to know how manipulated it is. It's just like kind of insane that if you bought oil when this started, the day it started, you're only up like 25% or something. I guess there have been backwardations, so you probably would have been paid by the roll yield in the curve every time it rolls to the next month. But still, like it's insane that if you took the bet that for 6 months now oil would be disrupted. You've barely made money, and it's like, this is the biggest oil supply shock in history by far, you know? Um, and, of course, we know things like OPEC's exports are definitely down by at least 4.5 million barrels. So, like, we know supply is shut in. We know there's no way supply equals demand right now, but we get consistent headline intervention, We can't go a week without, like, what was it, this Monday? The Pakistanis were like, yeah, there's going to be a deal within 24 hours. What are we on now, Thursday? There we go, right? Like, it's just, it's like all the time. So everyone's terrified to open a position. And like, even I am now, like, like I have buying power available. I could buy more. And I'm just like, I'm going to wait and see if there's some kind of Trump taco, Um, because like I'd rather buy it, 75. But also this week that Pakistani headline didn't do as much as it did before, right? So we have to wait and see.
Definitely. We have a lot of physical constraints here. You mentioned some. What specific signals would tell you that the suppression phase is ending? What signals would
I
alarm you?
mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think we're going to be in a situation where anyone gets margin called and we see oil skyrocket. Like, maybe, but it would require something insane, like Libya to go 100% offline and it to be like really bad unrest, Like, there had to be the expectation that Libya's gone offline and it's not coming back for, 2 to 3 months or something, right? Like, And like even then, I don't know. People at this point, they're convinced that strategic petroleum reserves will just keep being released and they'll manage to plug the gap, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to know what's going on, right? And also the thing I think has made this the hardest is everyone's insider trading it. So like I've followed this whole thing, like every headline, every tanker that's been hit, every refinery that's blown up or caught fire, and like also all the headlines related to deals, right? And the story just doesn't add up, Like if you've actually followed all the headlines, like it's very obvious that there's been a lot of lying. And the only thing at this point that makes sense is people are saying things to try and make money. Like why would the Pakistanis say we're 24 hours away from a deal? And like their actual prime minister said that, right?
Yeah.
So like I gotta believe at this point they shorted oil and they tried to make some money off it, or
I
something.
couldn't agree more because the story doesn't add up. And I agree totally. If we were in the 80s, I presume with this geopolitical shit show, the oil would be $250. Would you agree with that?
Um, yeah, probably. Although there were less, buffers back then too. Like China's hauling ass, right? Like they built this at least 1.3, 1.4 billion or billion barrel reserve. Um, and that's really what's doing everything, right? It's the fact the Chinese cut. And that's the thing I find the most interesting because with Trump always being like, "Oh, I'm going to tariff China and stuff," you'd think it would be in their interest to make Trump lose the midterms, right? Because if Trump like loses House and Senate uh, or Congress, he will definitely be impeached, right? If the Democrats get 100% control, he's done. So it's interesting that China is doing what they're doing because they could just snap their fingers and impeach him, right? Like they're in power right now. Like they could decide that they're going to unwind all the cuts they've done and actually rebuild all of the storage they released and suddenly add 10 million barrels a day of demand, right? So they could take us to all-time high oil demand. They could buy every single tanker because they have the space and storage for it now. So, something like that, we would see $250 oil, the next day. But like, will that happen? I don't know. I don't know what China's thinking here. Like, again, you'd think because Trump has been very unfriendly to China that China would want him out. But I don't know. Maybe also Trump is weakening America in ways that China wants to see, right? Like, it gets hard, There's so many angles that could be played here. So,
Good point. Can you detail your current oil related positions? Which names do you have in the portfolio? I know that you are pretty big on Obsidian Energy, some other names. Tell me more.
yeah. So the first thing is I have Brent oil calls that are like deep out of the money. And the reason for that is if Trump does something like ban, hydrocarbon exports from America, like Brent oil is going to jump to like 500 or something, right? Like Europe is being subsidized right now by America's exports. So if America turns off the exports, Europe's cooked. So that would be, a risk for like Obsidian maybe would struggle. Any Canadian stuff would probably struggle, right? Because WTI is going to crash if this happens, at least initially. So to cover myself against a margin call, I have quite a few calls on Brent oil. Um, and then after that, so the companies I like are the first one, Suncor, and that's for this exact same reason. Suncor is fully integrated. They pump the oil out of the ground and they refine it. So they also do this in Canada. So then they sell a lot of these refined products in Canada and supply most of Canada. So if Trump does do a hydrocarbon export ban, really that's actually going to skyrocket the cost of gasoline and diesel in Canada because we barely refine our own stuff. So for the most part, I'd see a company like Suncor being extremely posed for massive amounts of profit in this situation. Um, and so that's another, one of my hedges against this. And then other than that, my three favorites are Obsidian Energy, Journey Energy, and Rock Resources. So Obsidian Energy is really just they're in my opinion the highest torque to high oil prices, and that's because they have a $2 billion tax pool. So that means their next $2 billion of sales, they're not going to pay any tax. Um, and that's because a long time ago a company was called Penn West, and a whole bunch of things went wrong, and but there's new management now, and things look good. They're drilling new wells, they're hitting everything you want to see. So it does seem like a new company, but they still have this tax pool that protects them. And so I also like them because if Canada decides to go the more communist route and, throw some windfall taxes on, those tax pools are going to help, right? They could do a 100% tax. They still are going to be able to make more money than the current market cap because that tax pool is going to protect them, right? So
Yeah.
in absolutely insane cases, of course, we're not going to get a 100% tax, but so I like that. Journey Energy, same thing. They have a similarly large tax pool. I think it's still bigger than the market cap, not by as much as Obsidian. And then I like some things Journey have done. So like they've recently brought a power plant online, and it's good because in Alberta there's too much natural gas, so it's always worthless. Um, and so now that they have a power plant, they're able to sell natural gas for
Yeah.
a much higher premium than they would otherwise. So that's good. And there's also, I mean, right now it's looking very obvious that Journey is going to be taken over by Spartan. Of course, that might not happen, but we know from Spartan's last earnings that they bought a company. They didn't say which one, but like it's got to be Journey. Journey's their joint venture partner, right? Their JV partner. So and we saw also that Aimco, which is like this Alberta investment company, they sold their shares of Journey. So, the guess is they sold them to Spartan, right? And so that would give Spartan 10% ownership, and I think Aimco still holds another 10%. So, you can guess Spartan's right under the filing. So they'd have to file, their early warning takeover paperwork if they accumulate over 10%, and Aimco is sold like 9.88% or something. So it's like just under, but they still hold 10%. So, Spartan definitely would have a deal for 10% of the shares, or at least the voting power of 20% total. And so now we're waiting to see what happens. But just last night, it was released that Journey divested more of their non-core assets, and it was a good sale. They got rid of a lot of their decommissioning liabilities, like called ARO. But yeah, it was a good price. It's good to see. And like today, I think the stock's up 5 or 6%. I haven't checked recently, but it makes sense because everyone is seeing this and everyone's thinking the same thing, which is there's got to be a takeover soon because they're setting up for it. They're cleaning up the balance sheet, cleaning up the company's profile, and Spartan also recently bought shares. So it
Yeah.
makes
How are
sense
you
to
choosing?
speculate on this.
How are you choosing them? Is maybe the factor for you the dividend, the share buybacks?
Yeah,
How?
they also both have like normal course issuer bids. Obsidian is actively using theirs. I don't think that Journey is. For me, I bought both of them just because they're undervalued. With like $75 WTI, I would be expecting to make money on both, like a 40 to 50%. And, when this all started, my expectation was it would take at least 6 months. And, we're there now. Um, and after 6 months of supply disruption, I wrote that I think $80 WTI will be the floor. That's my floor price because this whole thing has happened. And that if this keeps on going, I'll start slowly shifting that floor price up. Of course, there's noise and there's the ability for governments to manipulate it. But um,
Always.
yeah, so basically, like with a floor price of $80 American oil, Obsidian, Rock, and Journey are all set to make a pile of money. And so that last stock, Rock Resources, I actually like it the most because it's got, in my opinion, the best risk reward. And that's because they're like half of their market cap in net cash. I think they have about 30 million in cash plus liquid assets. And I think that's because the market's been missing that they own like 17 or 18% of a lithium miner. Um, that's actually how I found them. I was looking at that lithium miner, and I was looking at who owned it, and I saw Rock Resources, and I remembered some people had told me to look into Rock Resources. And I was like, oh, I should probably do that. And then I saw all this. So the fact that they're 50% net cash versus the market cap, it's downside protection, right? Like you can't really drop more than 50%. But on top of that, they have producing wells, so they're producing about 3,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day, and they're growing that. They have a really aggressive capex plan for this year. I think they want to drill eight more wells just this summer. And their well economics are amazing with like I think $70 WTI. It's like a 4 or 5 month payback or something. It might be 6 month. They have a slide on it in their presentation. But yeah, so those are my three. And yeah, for
Looks
the
like
most
you did a quite a good due diligence on those names.
Yeah, definitely went deep in all three. Um, right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, we mentioned paper market suppression by precious metals as well. Are you positioned accordingly to gold and silver stocks? I mean, maybe producers, developers, exploration stories. How are you playing gold and silver?
I'm looking for cheap producers in both. So I still have my Minera Alamos, which everyone knows I own, and Patagonia Gold, which everyone knows I own. Um, and I'm just kind of waiting because, like, I don't know, like if there's a huge liquidity crunch because of the Strait of Hormuz crisis, um, like I can't see gold and silver really breaking out in at least in the near term. Of course, long term, like the longer this thing goes, the higher gold and silver will go because, there's more inflation coming. Like it's costing an enormous amount of money, and that money's American and in US dollars, right? So the US government debt will grow. The rest is easy to figure out, at
Yeah.
least over a long enough time span. Um, so yeah, for the most part, I don't really see gold or silver exploding until the Strait of Hormuz is resolved. And like if it truly was resolved, that's where I'd be pivoting into, would be back into cheap gold producers and cheap silver producers. And the reason is like that those miners have been absolutely smashed, there's so many that are just down like 60% from the highs, right?
Yeah.
So like, to get back up 60%, that's like 130% or something. So they're absolutely worth buying down here. It's just a matter of timing, right? It's like, when do you want to buy them? And they're definitely still going to make good earnings with the current prices, but I don't know if the market will appreciate them if overall, gold and silver are, in a bear market, which the headlines will read. So, yeah,
But yeah, does that apply to uranium as well? As I remember, you were a
yeah.
uranium bull. How are you playing uranium today?
Yeah, so uranium, I'm still watching. I want to jump in, but I'm waiting to see if something happens like SPY crashes, right? Like there is obviously, like I said, like Libya could go offline, or who knows, honestly, like Venezuela could have tons of unrest and go offline. Like I don't think that oil is, risk free. Like there's lots of risks that have happened historically. Like Libya tends to, go offline at the worst of times and send oil up, $20 overnight. Of course, when the Strait of Hormuz is currently closed, Libya going offline is an absolute disaster, right? Um, so there are risks that are, out there, and they could happen. And if they happen, SPY would crash, right? And all the uranium ETFs correlate so much with SPY, right? Like if SPY is red, you almost never see uranium green. So that would be when I buy. I'm waiting for this huge crash where SPY, stupidly tanks uranium, and maybe with luck I can buy spot at like 18, 19% discount, something like this,
That would be
because like
nice.
it's happened before. So
Yeah.
uh, that's how I'm looking at uranium, because like long term, there's a supply deficit there still, and it's not fixed, right? So yeah, I'm definitely thinking about it. It's just, again, it's a matter of timing, and like I said in a Brandon Balo interview shortly after this all started, like every trade right now, in my opinion, is Strait of Hormuz. Like you can't find me a stock where it's not Strait of Hormuz because of, like I said, like Ukraine could blow up a Russian pipeline tomorrow that's exporting oil to China, and China might be like, okay, shit, we got to start buying again and start, buying tankers. Like we don't know. Right?
Yeah.
There's so many things that could happen right now. The world's in the most unstable position it's probably been in my entire life. Um,
Definitely agreed on this. But that said, are you holding cash? How much cash do you hold? Are you waiting for a liquidity crisis of any form where you could deploy much more cash and buy cheap? For
no,
example, you
I,
mentioned uranium, however, other asset classes as well.
I should be holding cash, but I'm not. I'm all in, oil and gold basically right now, with slight exposure to silver. Um, and that's because, just like, I don't believe that the Iranians are going to let Trump off easy. And so far that belief has been correct, right? Like, and I'm super pissed about it because, I like, so many people capitulated on the trade. So many people said, it'll be closed at most a couple weeks, like Trump himself. And, getting it right and not having hit like a 5x by now is annoying, you know? Um, so I'm still waiting because just I don't see this resolving, like there's always a chance. Like, there's people speculating officials are being bribed, like United Arab Emirates just sent some planes back and forth to Iran, and people are like, oh, maybe they were carrying gold or cash. But um, like I do think that oil will continue to leak out of the Strait of Hormuz, but I don't think it's gonna get to a point where supply equals demand.
Mhm.
So I'm waiting. And like I said, there's all these other risks where if any one of them goes off, there's a huge payday. And
Yeah,
the
that's a
market is
fair.
absolutely not pricing those risks, right? Like Ukraine's already disrupted Russian exports many times. We're in this crazy situation right now where Russia's importing, gasoline and diesel, right? So their refineries are fucked up. So
Oof.
yeah, well, I don't know, like, but I know I'm overexposed. Like I hate it, um, because like Trump does tweet things that aren't true, and oil crashes on these things. So I should have
Yeah.
cash. It would be responsible to have cash.
Yeah, definitely some cash would be prudent to have. Gavin, how does your AI research background inform or not inform your commodities work? I mean, in a pattern recognition, modeling uncertainty. How do you apply it? Or
Um, so I have my own model that's like a time series neural network, and sometimes I use that for trading, but for the most part, it doesn't. Like, really, I've always just gone long fundamentals and been right. So, um, yeah, like, I don't do much trading. Um, it's really for me just like I don't even look at charts most of the time. So, like, there are a lot of days I don't even check the tickers that I own. Currently, that's not so true because I'm mostly, trying to see if there's a new Truth Social and I have to panic, or a new Axios article. But, um, you know, so yeah, AI. I mean, really, like I'm a computer scientist, and like I honestly love that more than anything else. Like I make tons of money in the market, but my true love in life, for the thing I like to do with my time, is work on computer science. And so AI is of course, right now it's a super major part of that, and something I have fun with, and I love the research I do there too. So,
is it the bubble AI?
um, probably not yet. I think that this is going to go much bigger. Um, I actually just bought some shares of Cloudflare because I think that they're well posed to be one of the future infrastructure players as far as agents are concerned and how they access the internet. Um, but yeah, my like I don't have really any exposure other than Cloudflare, and that's a small position. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say if it's a bubble or not. Like there are scientific results that could probably tank a lot of stocks. Um, like huge efficiency improvements that could happen, right? Where suddenly, you don't need as many GPUs, except there's also what's the name? Is it Jevons paradox? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's the
Yeah.
paradox where if something becomes more efficient, people can just start using it more, and so you'd think it would, lower GPU demand, but just increases it, right? Um, but yeah, and I mean, even for myself, so like I've been starting to look at the memory stocks, which have dipped a lot lately from their highs, and that's because really the rate limiting thing is right now memory. And so like I want to build my own mini like 8 kilowatt data center. And part of that's just I don't want people spying on what I'm talking to the large language model about. And Kimi was just released, which is like a 2.8 trillion parameter model that was trained in China, and it's really good. So it would be nice to be able to run that locally. Um, but to do that, I have to drop like 3 to 4 million US dollars because I need to buy really what I'm paying for is memory. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so that's part of it too. Like I think that local LLMs are really going to go up in demand. And because like I'm not the only person, I'm certainly not the only person out here that doesn't want, everyone stealing my data when I talk to the LLM. especially if it's sensitive data, right? It could be, proprietary code or, intellectual property that no one knows I have, and I just don't want people to, know even what I'm thinking about sometimes. Like sometimes there's a lot of value in a question, right? Like a famous physicist, I forget which one, but said something like he was criticizing the education system and saying that it really only teaches you how to solve problems, but the most important part is to know which questions to ask, right?
Exactly.
And so that's also like when people are talking about artificial general intelligence, like AGI or super intelligence, really, these models, they have no idea what questions to ask, but they're really good at solving problems. So, like they're really replacing the current university system. Like I have no idea where academia is going. Obviously this knowing what questions to ask is important, and that's probably where professors will be mostly situated in
Okay.
the future. But yeah, I don't think the bubble is going to pop yet. It's got so much fuel, and the scientific results are coming so fast. The improvements are coming fast, so the capital is going to flow. Especially when you have CEOs promising super intelligence by 6 months, right? Which
Yeah,
you have. That's Anthropic CEO has been saying that for like 3 years now. So,
that's a fair view. Gavin, how can people reach out to you?
on Twitter, if you comment or send me a message, I usually reply, and there's also my Substack. So,
What's the Substack?
Demystifying Life. Yeah,
Okay,
and that's where I write about biochemistry and geopolitics and stocks. So
go and follow Gavin on X and Substack and subscribe. Gavin, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed your insights about oil, AI, precious metals, uranium. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for having me.